So Mr. Big obviously, realised that there was something afoot all the way back in March of this year, because I wrote a story that he had fled to Dubai because he was afraid that he was going to face charges in relation to the murder of Robbie Lawlor. He went out to Dubai, and my understanding is that he didn't get the residency for the United Arab Emirates, that his request was turned down. And he's back, as far as we know, in Ireland or whatever, Spain, wherever he's knocking around. But we have a story this week which will put a chill into Mr. Big, because it's essentially, in as much as we can, confirmation that he is now absolutely under investigation for the murder of Robbie Lawlor, that the Gardaí have Encrochat material, which is the hacked phone material, messages and stuff, which they believe there is enough evidence in to link him to the murder of Lawler.
Yes, so
this is an extraordinary move by the Gardaí, by the way, and we were only talking last week about the fact that they are now publicly speaking about the Encrochat material, how they are finally getting it 5 years after the hack.
Yes, so Ken Foy, who works for the Irish Independent and for the Sunday World, he had a story. He interviewed Seamus Boland, who's the detective superintendent over the drugs. Chief Detective, Chief Superintendent over the Garda Drugs
and Organised Crime Bureau. It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is a mouthful. But anyway, so we won't go back into the whole detail. But basically, he said his unit now have the intelligence gleaned from Encrochat, which is all of those messages from that period of time in 2020, and they're combing through them, and they're looking to bring criminal prosecutions as a result.
Yeah.
Now, Robbie Lawlor was murdered right in bang, smack in the middle of that Encrochat hack, probably when,
the beginning of it, the 4th of April, 2020.
Exactly. So whatever, there's obviously a huge amount of logistics go into a murder. Those logistics particularly happen in the 24 hours before. We know, I think the guards or the PSNI, have said up to 20 people played some role in the murder. There would have been a huge exchange of messages in the 24 hours running up to it, and presumably the 24 hours in the aftermath. And that all of that, we believe, is occurred on Encrochat, and all of that now should be available to the PSNI and the Gardaí, or, certainly some of it that occurred here will have been.
But there's a confidence that from what they have seen so far, and we know that the Encrochat material, if it existed around a particular case or, murder, drug operation, whatever, has been utilised by the PSNI, in that they have made some, inroads with convictions, quite a few in the north. In actual fact, I think they were first nearly out of the traps with it.
Yeah.
The NCA2, as you can see from the Channel 4 documentary, have had a huge amount of success with the material. So they have had and have been sifting through the material for 5 years at this stage. So undoubtedly their work will complement and put the Gardaí on forward footing, because they will already have identified if and what handles associated with the Robbie Lawlor murder are linked to who.
Yes.
So they're basically going to be working with the PSNI in relation to this. And so, while they're coming to this very late in the game, the Gardaí, they're also coming with the work of others.
They will, and some of that evidence presumably will be heard in open court in soon, as some of the people charged in relation to the Robbie Lawlor murder investigation go on trial. So in order for that to have happened, they will have to be identified, and so we'll just have to see who they're talking to. What we do know about the Mr. Big organisation, while Mr. Big is a major supplier of drugs in the north of Dublin and all through loads of parts of Ireland, he's a particularly strong footprint up in the north. Guys like Barry Young, who were part of his operation, also really had a very strong presence in the north, in the border area.
It's separate, but maybe using him as supply or for finances or whatever.
Yes, and also there's a couple of figures up in the border area where Mr. Big would have grown up with, and very serious criminals, and we know that they are on Encrochat phones because we know they've come before the courts. So all of that big picture of information.
So let's look at the Robbie Lawlor murder. Now, it was, and of course this, we have done a deep enough dive into this on a Crime World Presents podcast called Double Cross, which we actually only recently ran. So if you go back a little bit in our stream, either on YouTube or on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get it, you'll find the full series there. It's an 8-part podcast done. And also the murder is covered in my book, Web of Betrayal, which is also available. It's complex and it's a very interesting moment in time for gangland, which is why I bothered with it really, because for me, it's this moment where you have a figure like Robbie Lawlor. Everybody is circling him. He has carried out some horrendous crimes and he has become the big, guy wanted in gangland. But he travels up over the border. And you have this moment that police are listening in to the underworld on Encrochat. They're listening live. And they're all using these phones oblivious to the fact that this hack is going on. You have the involvement of really north and south criminals where you see there is no longer a border. They're all working together. And really, it's a moment in time as well that we really see that it's the drug dealers that hold the balance of power now in the north, not the dissident groupings. The dissident groupings are basically, being hired out to work for the drug gangs. So in the run-up to his murder, what you had was a situation in Dublin, which is significant to do with his murder, that you had this Drogheda feud, which had been going on, and it had really taken off as such. You had on one side of it the Price-Maguire faction, Cornelius Price and Owen Maguire. And they had at one point sort of controlled that very lucrative area of Louth, North Dublin. But younger members of the gang had broken away and decided to go it alone. They did so with the backing and the support of Richie Carberry, who was a drug dealer originally from the same sort of geography as Mr. Big, but who had moved up to, was it Laytown or Bettystown area, had based himself up there and was basically giving these young guns support, guns probably, and, logistical backing in their fight against the Price-Maguire faction. For him, that was a business model because with them in power and control, he could make more of the profits ultimately because he's going to be wholesaling more to them. So the war gets very, very dirty. Richie Carberry is ultimately murdered while his brother-in-law, Robbie Lawlor, a very dangerous, chaotic criminal, is still in prison. Lawler is facing trial for these threats to kill a woman in Coolock whose son is going out with his ex-girlfriend, and he has arrived, the state said, at her house one night and shot through the window in an effort to kill her and her sons. He goes on trial and is found not guilty by a jury. Because it's seen as a domestic case and not a gangland crime, it's not put before the Special Criminal Court. I think you would have had a very different result there. Nonetheless, jury find him not guilty. He walks out of court with a Parker jacket on and goes back straight really wades into this war where he vows to avenge the murder of his brother-in-law.
Yes.
He's a dangerous character anyway, but he's very fueled up on this. He's in a gym in Dublin one day in January, and a group of young people who would be working for Mr. Big. They'd be the underlings of Mr. Big, the kind of the kids.
In North Dublin, a group of young guys, early 20s, late teens. And Mr. Big is, however big he got, he always managed to keep control, particularly the areas of Coolock, Darndale, and he would have been supplying them. And amongst them was one particularly kind of dangerous and violent young criminal who's a male associate of this young man had been actually killed by Robbie Lawlor in the past.
And Mr. Big has personal beef with Robbie Lawlor anyway because his friend Kenneth Finn is murdered essentially by Lawler. Kenneth Finn is an assassin.
Yeah, a gunman
himself.
Yeah.
And Lawler, I can't even remember why it was.
But they had also been friends, but anyway,
there were so many fallings out.
Yeah, and he lured him to his death, Robbie Lawler, despite their long-term association.
So Mr. Big is beef anyway. He sees that, Lawler is an enemy up in Drogheda. He is very much threatening to avenge the killing of his brother-in-law. He's also been the one that is seen as being responsible for the shooting of Owen Maguire some years previous. Owen Maguire survived that, but has been left in a wheelchair. So Robbie Lawler's release kind of alerts, there's alerts going around Gardaí stations everywhere, and he's really dangerous. He's this set to with these kids outside the gym. They take his gym bag, and they basically push him around the place.
Yeah.
And they video it, and they put this video up online, which humiliates Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Robbie Lawler, and I think it's still the January, then conducts what is one of the most gruesome murders in the Irish underworld history, when he abducts a 17-year-old called Cian Mulready Woods, and he murders and dismembers him. And the dismembered body parts, the legs, I think in particular, in a sports bag, are successfully dumped into a North Dublin estate where Mr. Big's stronghold is, and the child's head and torso, etc. The plan is to dump them near a compound where Cornelius Price lives. That never occurs.
No, as the body parts are found and the guards are circling, and so that doesn't happen, and they're dumped elsewhere.
Yeah,
ultimately up in County Louth.
So the whole thing is on a knife edge. Lawler is returning to Drogheda despite the fact that he's, the most wanted man both in gangland and by law enforcement. And throughout, I think, February, March and into April, he starts travelling and working up north. He's going up and down over the border. He is collecting drug debts, offering his services for that. He's also going after funds he believes are owed to his murdered brother-in-law, Richie Carberry. And he is in the company of the Dundons, Ger Dundon in particular, who he's previously met in prison and is sort of using him as security plus as a comrade, friend, whatever you'd call it. So 4th of April, he goes to Ardoyne, a Republican stronghold in Belfast, and he goes to knock on a door, and a gunman bursts out, kills him, and runs off down the street.
Yeah.
Ger Dundon is in a car outside. He takes off at breakneck speed. He later tells cops he thought he was going to be shot too. He and 2 accomplices are arrested. But weirdly, because none of us know that the hack is on, they're released without charge. And the confusion starts really as regards who killed Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, because the initial reporting obviously is, it's confused anyway, but ultimately it's reported Robbie Lawler was shot dead, and, Ger Dundon was arrested shortly after at the scene. And the initial belief is, because of the history of the Dundon gang, who have certainly engaged in a lot of double crosses or a lot of these kind of murders along that type, it's believed that they have carried it out. So they're arrested very close to the scene. You can see why that belief would be there, but it's the ruling out of them really quickly is the unusual
confusing
bit.
And days later, associates of theirs collect a reward for the murder of Robbie Lawler from associates of the Maguire grouping. That's all put under surveillance, and they're caught, and the money is seized by the state. But at the time, because I remember going up to cover this case of Robbie Lawler's murder, and it was lockdown.
Yeah.
We were travelling as key workers or something. I was delighted to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Went up to Belfast. The rumours were all day. We were trying to establish that it was Robbie Lawler because there was massive confusion around it. But I remember very, very, very early on, and it happened on a Saturday, and I can't remember whether it was actually in the next day I was able to report, or was it just in the following week, but it was very quick. I was being told that behind that murder was Mr. Big, and a 3 big bosses sort of took it on and worked together to pool the resources to create this scenario and to put Lawler basically under surveillance. And it was it was said to me that he was being watched. He was being sort of, there were predators basically around watching, waiting for an opportunity. They had made a number of attempts in his life which were failed, but that this was the kind of the brainchild of Mr. Big.
Yes, and the idea would be that they knew his movements, they knew when to expect him, that a gunman had lain in wait in the house, knowing that he was going to arrive at this time, and it was carefully planned. So
now, in the north, there's 3 people before the courts in relation to this, and as they have sought bail, we've had these brilliant for us bail hearing cases where evidence is heard, and the PSNI have suggested at these cases that they are aware that 20 people were involved in the murder of Robbie Lawlor, each with their own significant role. They have suggested that it was plotted in the south and it was carried out in the north. They haven't yet said or put before the courts, because no trial has started, any Encrochat material, but we certainly are aware that material is in place and it's pretty vast.
Yes, and as we said, we do know that associates of Mr. Big were absolutely on Encrochat. I mean, that has formed part of the record in other cases that we can't actually go into here, but I mean, there's no doubt about it. And as we said recently, in order for Encrochat is only good if both people are on the phones. So somebody has to be on the other end. So it's a novel case.
But it's a sort of powerful stuff that's coming out from the guards. Initially, we were talking about official quotes from Seamus Boland, who's one of the highest ranking police officers fighting organised crime in the country. And he has specifically said on the record that the Gardaí from the Garda Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau are now looking at the Encrochat material, that they weren't privy to it at the time that it was happening, the hack, unlike their colleagues perhaps in the NCA and the PSNI, because for a long time that material was kept in the Crime and Intelligence Unit we spoke about recently, and it wasn't really passed on down the lines. But he is clearly stating on the record that they now have it.
They now have it, and they've received it legally, as he says. So that must be a procedure that has to go
through warrant or whatever
way it is that allows them then to build a case as a result of it. If you receive something through intelligence, that's a whole other matter. It's never going to appear in court, so it doesn't matter. So in some way, this material has come at them specifically. Now, we know Mr. Big was the target of raids in recent times. It has been reported that those raids that household items were taken out of the house he was staying in. And certainly it would lead you to suspect, why would they take them? I mean,
we speculated at the time that perhaps there was Encrochat material and perhaps pictures had been taken that might be relative to this sort of stuff that was in a house, etc.
Because you see, this has, as we've seen these cases come to court in England, and that guy Jamie Rothwell that we spoke about the other day got 43 years today, a 43-year sentence, which is incredible. But a lot of how he was identified was his location, who he was, everything was as a result of these selfies and other pictures he took on Encrochat and sent to his friends. And that has been repeated 100, whatever number of times, huge amounts of times. So if Mr. Big is in a house, if he has sent pictures from that house, even pictures that don't involve his face, but that involve, him sitting watching
room
TV,
or
something like that, if the guards can match them up.
It's very difficult to remember, if you were a prolific phone user, exactly what you had put into texts and stuff 5 years ago, wouldn't it?
It would.
And bear in mind, again, these were different times. This was the first hack ever on an encrypted phone network. Some of the networks have been taken down, but this was a live hack. So none of these guys had any idea the police were listening in to what they were saying. And they were also very confident of these devices at the time, that they were sort of bulletproof communication devices.
After a long time using them.
Yeah. So you'd have got very loose with your chat, wouldn't you?
Very loose. And it's amazing actually, that program, because you see how paranoid they are otherwise about going outside, about what they wear, everything. But just like is human nature, over time, they just become sloppy on the phones.
Yeah, and lazy on the phones. Now, there was another part of the story that I'm sure maybe will become clear as time goes on, and perhaps as the Gardaí build their case against how many of those 20 that the PSNI have told the court were in the south of the border are part of Big's network or other kind of names in the criminal underworld. But if you remember some years ago when Barry Young from Sligo was arrested, and there was all these texts, WhatsApp texts actually, his were, he wasn't sophisticated enough with his Encro, or maybe he had one of those as well, I don't know, but he told the court, because he pleaded guilty to directing a criminal network, which police told the court was an international drug ring, and he sort of suggested that he was in fear of an older or sort of a bigger criminal,
more senior criminal
that he owed a lot of debt to. And informed crime journalists have suggested that individual that was not named in court was Mr. Big.
Yeah.
And that he was somehow caught up in owing him a lot of money and was in fear of him. Again, to date, Barry Young has been pretty much locked up by his own words, but they're on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
On presumably more regular phones than...
Yes, and I mean, if that was very much focused on a cannabis dealing ring in the west of Ireland, I mean, certainly would be believed that he wasn't WhatsApping the senior person, that it may have all occurred on a... He
does, however, come up in the case because he meets with Adrian Holland, who's before the courts in the north, in Sligo, is it before or after? I think it's before the murder, and this has been cited as this meeting that Adrian Holland, during the bail hearings, the PSNI have said, has a meeting with an international,
drug trafficker
in Sligo, in a hotel in Sligo, and that individual is indeed Barry Young.
Yeah.
Adrian Holland is the owner as such of the house, although I think it's owned by a number of members of his family in Ardoyne, where Robbie Lawlor is shot. It was his grandmother's home, actually.
Yeah.
Now, he has, I think, so far, has he pleaded? He's denied? Yeah.
No, he's denied it. And
guilty.
He said the meeting was nothing to do with any plot to kill Robbie Lawlor. If you remember when Robbie Lawlor was shot dead, the initial reports were it was actually Adrian Holland who had been shot dead because it was a house he had been associated with.
Well, it was his granny's house. I think he was living in it, was he? Or he was staying there.
There was a man
about COVID, and aunt was sick or something, and he wasn't there.
So a man was shot dead, and it initially was reported to us. We heard it was a guy called Adrian Holland.
Yeah.
Because, but it's not alleged by the state in the north that Adrian Holland was the shooter, and he has denied. He has accepted he met with Barry Young, but in previous court hearings he said that was nothing to do with anything.
It's friendship or something.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting as this goes on and the unravelling of this very secretive underworld plot to kill Robbie Lawlor, where while he's such a wanted man, he is a victim of crime, and who double-crossed him and who was trying to take him out of the picture and for what reasons, because you can be damn sure if some of those individuals, including Mr. Big, were involved in that, it wasn't for the greater good of society because of the murder of Cian Mulready Woods. It was probably for really business purposes. There's an awful lot of murders that occur in gangland, which would be a case of kill or be killed. If an individual fears that somebody might come for them. Yeah,
and Robbie Lawlor, of course, somebody to be feared.
For sure, very capable of it. So I'm interested in seeing where this story goes, and perhaps, who knows, we can update Double Cross, our own podcast on this.
Yeah, with arguably the greatest double crossover of them all, Mr. Big.
Absolutely. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.